Hello, this is David Bruning and Gina Esposito for The Safe Room. On the show today, we have Will Chakowski and Daniel Blaskowitz, both high school seniors at our local high school. Will, how would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Will Chakowski. I'm a senior at Lockport.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, so I'm Daniel Blaskowitz, also a senior at Lockport High School, and so me and Will kind of have been debating about politics all of our high school careers, I guess, and so yeah, that kind of is what started us to start the Model UN Club and talk about politics, and we've always just been interested in it, and so
Yeah. I mean, we've debated politics a lot.
Quite a bit.
In the classroom, especially at Model United Nations, and I know that you classify yourself as more of a left-leaning person, and Dan's more of a right-leaning person. But from a student's perspective, how do you think that they view the left and the right? What do you think that their definition of the two are?
I would say over time, the idea of the left has, especially in the past couple years since Trump's been elected, has stretched further and further left. And I think if you identify with the left nowadays, it's a lot different than it was the pre-Trump era.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that is?
I think that it's because a lot of people are responding to Trump with extreme left ideas because they hate the way he talks and just the idea of Trump in office. I think they're trying to respond with a different way of acting. Instead of the Obama era leftists, they're trying to become even more radical.
Would you consider him extremely right?
Trump?
Yeah.
In terms of policy, I wouldn't consider Trump extremely right. I'd probably consider him an average conservative in terms of economic policy.
So if he's an average conservative, then what makes the left push further left to combat that if he's just an average moderate candidate?
Well, because the left had Obama in office for a long time, so they were able to identify with certain ranges of leftism, it wasn't scorned. But since Trump entered office, the rhetoric became a lot more extreme, towards the left wings. So I think if you wanted to identify as a liberal, you became more left. And I think people who were moderate liberals kind of moved towards the center.
Can I jump in here? Because I have something to say about that.
Of course.
Just in general, I don't think that Trump is by any means far right or anything, and I think that a lot of it's just a misconception that people are. He says some kind of crazy things, obviously, and kind of people brandish him as far right and stuff. But if you actually look at his economic, not economic and social policies and foreign policy, anything, nothing is really never before seen. I mean, immigration, people he promised maybe things that would have been seen as radical and stuff, but he hasn't really necessarily followed through with all of that. Economically, there's nothing that hasn't been seen before, and it's not even as radical as it has been in the 80s and stuff. So I feel it's just kind of a large misconception that people are labeling him as far right and stuff, but I can't even really point to a single one of his policies that's particularly that I would label far right. So
Yeah,
I think
true. I mean, going off of your point, I think that that's completely true. The left has gotten further left because if you look at JFK's policies, he would be considered conservative by today's standard, I guess.
Do you consider President Barack Obama kind of a moderate candidate as well?
No, definitely not. That's kind of where I'm strange because, in my opinion, every conservative generation for the last 30 years is just the liberals of 10 years ago. If you look at conservatives our age who are allegedly conservative, well, not all of them, but I would say most of them are pretty much just liberals who don't believe in global warming at this point, as far as I can tell. So it's I think that the social scales and political scales throughout the entire world have just been continuously getting more liberal. I mean, that's just by definition what liberal means. So I don't think Obama was moderate. I think Obama was quite far left, and I think Trump is pretty much not even a really particularly conservative, just a right-wing populist.
Yeah. Well, Obama pushed more of a social agenda, and Trump's really pushing that economic policy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when Obama was in office, do you felt conservatives moved further right? Kind of in comparison to how, liberals moved further left under President Trump's office term?
Again, it's I understand why, not necessarily farther right, but maybe kind of more outspoken. If you look at the previous candidates of the Republican Party, if you look at someone like Mitt Romney, John McCain, they were just kind of run-of-the-mill politicians, and they were just pushing the same foreign policy, nothing particular that didn't really inspire people. So again, it's not that Trump is particularly far right. I don't think it's a backlash against Obama. Whether or not it should be, that's maybe a different conversation, but I don't think it is. It's just that Trump kind of gave meaning to right-wing ideas and that other Republicans couldn't do it. So it's not that he's farther right or anything. It's just that he's more expressive. He connects with people at a more personal level, and he kind of convinced them of his ideas, I would say.
Do you think that makes a more transparent government when your president's outspoken about how he truly feels?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And sometimes it's for good and for bad. I mean, people use it against him constantly, but I think it's great that
That's the whole freedom of speech, right?
Yeah, I really feel like he's out there. So
Yeah, for sure. So in today's younger climate, do you guys see a lot of the socialist, extreme left-wing students?
I honestly think our school and what we deal with a lot is moderates. Most people are moderate or just uninterested.
it's because the demographic at our school isn't necessarily representative. I think younger generations are, obviously there are people farther left in our generations, but if you look at where kids are coming from in our school, it's a mostly moderate or conservative area, and I mean most kids aren't even willing to talk about politics, so it's hard
True.
to say. So
That's when you look at our area, and there's been a lot of studies that the newest generation is really conservative. They're one of the most conservative generations in history. But at the same time, we see this huge rise in socialism on the political scale. Why do you guys think that is? Not necessarily aside from academia, but family structures, etc.
Well, I think one of the reasons why socialism is kind of booming right now in the leftist party is because what I was talking about earlier, it's just pushing away from Trump just because of the left's hate towards Trump. So the furthest you can push away from Trump seems to be socialism, which is where a lot of people are ending up on the Democratic Party, even though that's not representative of what the Democratic Party should truly stand for.
Do you think socialism also typically gets misconstrued for just regular Democrats?
Yeah, I think that's happening a lot right now with current Democratic primary candidates. A lot of Democratic primary candidates are pushing very, very far left, and I think that's scaring away some moderate Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. For sure, and we can touch on that next too.
Jumping into the
Good one,
presidential
good one.
election.
As we want to move into that shift, what do you guys think of the 2020 presidential election? Best Republican candidate?
that one Massachusetts guy that's challenging Trump, definitely going to vote for him.
Yeah.
He's probably going to win.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, at this point, I would definitely. I mean, Trump is probably going to get challenged by one or two people.
I mean, look, we have
Everyone's just gonna get
20 Democratic
Yeah.
candidates in the primary right now.
Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the max is 20. Only 20 can go to the primary, so two people have to get kicked off. But the two forerunners are obviously Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's kind of ridiculous that Biden's sort of representative of the old generation of Democrats, and he's allegedly more moderate and not engaging in these radical social policies. But it's kind of ridiculous how much power the party has over him, which is why I think Trump is so great. Something that is really about him is that he kind of resists pressure from the party and stuff, because I think the Republicans hated the fact that Trump got elected to begin with. They wanted Hillary to win because they thought he would ruin the party. But something I saw Biden today say that we shouldn't rule out giving health care to undocumented immigrants and something like that. And that's not even a debate whether or not that's good or bad, but that's obviously a very far left idea. And he's but this is the moderate candidate, the reasonable person, pushing away from Bernie, and he's saying stuff like that. And I just think it's kind of ridiculous that I'm not even sure that he truly believes it. I don't think he does, because he's an older style Democrat, but he's getting it's the party is a huge whip. It's they're trying to whip him into shape and get him to support all these far left ideas that he probably doesn't even support himself. So I think it's gonna be bad for the Democrats. Honestly, at this point, I think the only one who has any sort of chance of beating Trump would be Biden, but anyone else would get killed, I feel and even Biden, I don't think. He's probably just lying about everything he's saying now about illegal immigration because he wants to win, and that's what they all do.
Yeah,
so.
why is socialism in? Why do students think they're so cool because they're socialists?
Just a buzzword that has no meaning that people associate with. It's what I was saying, and what kind of in reference to what you said, this is allegedly, I've seen that study that suggests that this generation is extremely conservative, but I feel that's kind of really conservatives are kind of lying to themselves to make themselves feel safe, because I don't feel that's actually true. I feel people may say that they're conservative, but these days I'm not even sure what that really means, because I feel so many people who even are allegedly conservative are in support of abortion and kind of these non-conservative ideas and stuff. So I think it's just obviously appealing to the younger generations who are continuously getting more and more liberal.
So yeah, with Generation Z, do you think the conservative party is kind of making a turn to fit those more social norms, your social topics of politics?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, if you even look at Trump, he's socially liberal. I mean, he supports gay marriage, and I mean, he isn't particularly outspoken about abortion. I mean, he's allegedly Christian, but I feel that's sort of, he's just trying to appeal to Southern voters. So it's they're definitely trying to accommodate social liberalism, because I feel they need to, which I don't know. You can look at it two ways, because I think it's, on one hand it's bad, but I mean, they're probably never going to win an election again if like they don't. So interesting topic.
Yeah, and I think another reason why socialism, like a lot of the current Democratic candidates are talking about socialism, is because in the primaries you usually have the most radical of the parties coming out and voting. Compared to the presidential elections, it's much lower turnout, and it's usually the people who are really passionate about the politics that come out, and those are the people who will be more left. So in order to appeal to those very left voters in the primaries, I think maybe they're acting a little bit more left than they normally would, or their policies would seem. Mm-hmm. And I think you can see that with Trump too, like in terms of like policy, like during his campaign, he was acting very, very right, and like in terms of rhetoric and like what he would say. And then when he got elected, he acted on what he did, but it wasn't obviously to the magnitude of like what he promised during his campaign.
That's actually a really good point.
So don't you think that these Democrats that are trying to pose as socialists, don't you think that's detrimental to our nation? Like why should we vote in candidates that are running for something that they truly aren't? You know, that's like just destroys the whole democratic process.
Yeah, I totally agree that if you're being a politician, you should act who you truly are and appeal to voters and appeal to common sense and appeal to the American people. But that's not going to get them elected, so I can see why the candidates are doing so. It's just, I don't think it's a smart move.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I don't think either political party cares about the majority of America.
That's an assumption. If you're going into the argument with that assumption, then everything you said is kind of meaninless. Because to assume that people are that politicians, even someone like Trump, who I would consider to be more transparent than average, if you think he really has like any politician has your best interest in mind, you're likely mistaken. So.
And I don't think a politician could get elected into one of the two major parties if he said he cared about the middle, because that's not the track you can take right now. And I think like in other countries they have systems where you can vote in different candidates, not in a two-party system. But I mean, that's just like what we have to deal with, what we have in our Constitution.
Mm-hmm. So are you in support of like the Electoral College? Like, do you think abolishing that would somehow create more like larger partisanship to different parties?
No, I'm completely in support of the Electoral College. I think some states should be, maybe the line should be redrawn, like California should be maybe turned into a couple different states. Like having such a dense population in one area with 55 electoral votes in one state, like governed by one governor, is extremely inefficient. And if they were able to break that up, then maybe California could be better governed, like they would be able to increase tax revenue, etc. Because Eastern California is much, much more conservative than Western California. And if you divided it by the center, I'm almost positive that Eastern California would vote almost wholly conservative, while the Western side would vote almost wholly like liberal. And there's a lot of like problems with that, and I think that's why the Electoral College is such a good thing for our country, because even though the smaller states that don't have huge urban centers, they still get their voices heard. Campaigns still need to be ran in those states. You don't get to focus just on the huge urban centers. Every vote matters, really, when you have the Electoral College.
That's a pretty wild view, because most people think that your vote doesn't matter if the Electoral College system, because really you're just voting for the representative of your state.
And then you have to put your faith in that representative to make the choice that you want.
Which it doesn't happen that they overturn that quite frequently, but here's a hot take right here. The Electoral College is not very, it's obviously like not like perfectly representative, because like there's been like several candidates that have lost the popular vote and won the Electoral College. So in that sense, it's bad, but I mean, I'm in support of it, because if not for the Electoral College, I mean, the Democrats would win every national election, and there's like 3 million more registered Democrats than Republicans. So, I mean, if not for the Electoral College, it would be very difficult for any Republican to ever win. So, objectively, it's probably not great, but I'm in support of it because it's convenient politically. So, being brutally honest there.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. If you liked the episode, visit TurningPoint.news and click on the ad to visit Turning Point USA's merch store. Tune in next time on The Safe Room.